Hey there. Welcome back to Color and Craft Haven, a little corner of calm where we can slow down, breathe, and add a little color to the day. Today we're talking about something that sounds incredibly responsible, slightly boring, and yet has the power to save you from a surprising amount of artistic regret. Building a color palette before you start. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're here for creativity, not spreadsheets. You want inspiration, not planning. You want to throw open your marker case, grab whatever color catches your eye, and trust the process. And honestly, sometimes that works. Sometimes you create something beautiful through pure instinct. Other times, however, you end up staring at your finished project, wondering why it somehow looks like a carnival exploded inside a salad. That's the mysterious power of color choices. The good news is that spending a few minutes planning your palette can dramatically improve the final result without making creativity feel rigid or restrictive. One of the biggest misconceptions about planning is that it somehow removes spontaneity from the creative process. People often imagine that artists who plan everything must sit in dark rooms surrounded by charts and diagrams, muttering about color theory while refusing to have any fun. In reality, planning gives you more freedom, not less. Think about going on a road trip. If you know where you're headed, you're free to enjoy the journey. If you have no idea where you're going, every turn becomes a crisis. Color palettes work the same way. When you've already decided on the general family of colors you'll use, you're no longer spending every 5 minutes debating between 17 different shades. You can relax and focus on the enjoyable part, actually creating. Let's talk about what a color palette actually is, because sometimes the term sounds fancier than it really is. A color palette is simply a group of colors you've chosen to work together in a project. That's it. No secret handshake required. It might be 3 colors, 5 colors, or 10 colors. The point isn't the number. The point is creating a sense of unity. Imagine you're inviting guests to a dinner party. You probably don't invite people who actively despise each other and then act surprised when chaos erupts. Colors behave similarly. Some combinations naturally cooperate. Others spend the entire project arguing. A palette helps ensure that the colors you're using are at least willing to sit at the same table together without starting a dramatic reality television show. One reason palettes improve outcomes is that they create consistency. Human brains absolutely love consistency. We notice it even when we don't realize we're noticing it. When a project uses a cohesive palette, everything feels intentional. Viewers often describe this feeling as professional, polished, harmonious, or satisfying. What's funny is they usually can't exactly explain why. They just know it feels right. Meanwhile, a project with random colors often feels scattered, even when the technical execution is excellent. It's like showing up to a formal dinner wearing a tuxedo jacket and rubber boots, a pirate hat, and swimming goggles. Every individual item might be perfectly fine. Together, however, they create some questions. Another benefit of planning your palette beforehand is that it helps you avoid decision fatigue. Creative hobbies are supposed to be relaxing, but making hundreds of tiny decisions can become exhausting. Every choice uses a little mental energy. What color should this flower be? What about the background? Should that shadow be cool or warm? Is this blue too blue? Can blue be too blue? Suddenly, you're 30 minutes into an existential crisis about a leaf. When you've established your palette ahead of time, many of those decisions are already made. You're not eliminating creativity. You're simply reducing the number of choices competing for your attention. That leaves more energy available for enjoying the project itself. One of my favorite exercises is choosing a mood before choosing colors. Most people start by asking what colors they want. I find it more useful to ask how I want the finished piece to feel. Do I want it cozy, dramatic, peaceful, magical, cheerful, mysterious? Once you identify the mood, the color choices become much easier. Soft earth tones create a very different emotional response than neon pink and electric green. Neither is wrong. They simply tell different stories. Colors are surprisingly powerful emotional tools. They influence how we experience an image before we consciously analyze it. Choosing the mood first is like deciding what kind of book you're writing before selecting the vocabulary. This becomes especially important when working with fantasy-themed artwork. Many fantasy enthusiasts automatically reach for every bright color they own because fantasy worlds are exciting and magical. Unfortunately, magical doesn't necessarily mean every color in the rainbow needs equal representation. Sometimes a restrained palette actually creates a stronger fantasy atmosphere. Think about a moonlit forest using cool blues, silvers, and muted greens. The limited palette creates immersion. It feels like a real place. Meanwhile, adding random orange, hot pink, bright yellow, and turquoise everywhere can accidentally turn your enchanted woodland into something resembling a wizard-sponsored amusement park. A useful strategy for beginners is the rule of dominant, secondary, and accent colors. This sounds intimidating, but it's actually incredibly simple. Your dominant colors do most of your work. Your secondary colors support them. Your accent colors appear sparingly to create interest and focus. Think of it like a conversation. If everyone talks at maximum volume all of the time, nobody stands out. The same thing happens with color. When every color is demanding attention, the viewer's eye doesn't know where to go. Accent colors become powerful specifically because they're used sparingly. A tiny touch of bright color can often have more impact than covering the entire page with it. Now let's discuss a trap that catches almost everyone at some point: falling in love with individual colors instead of the overall palette. We've all done it. You discover the most beautiful marker, pencil, or paint you've ever seen. It's glorious, it's magnificent, it practically sings when you remove the cap. Naturally, you decide to use it everywhere. Unfortunately, beautiful colors are not always appropriate colors. A stunning shade can still clash with the rest of your project. Learning to prioritize harmony over individual favorites is one of those subtle skills that dramatically improves artistic results. Sometimes the best color choice isn't the most exciting color. It's the color that helps everything else shine. Another reason palette planning matters is that it creates a visual hierarchy. In plain English, it helps viewers understand what they're supposed to notice first. Imagine reading a book where every word was bold, underlined, highlighted, and written in capital letters. Nothing would stand out because everything is competing equally. Color works the same way. Strategic palette choices help guide attention. Your focal point can receive stronger contrast or brighter accents, while supporting elements remain more subdued. The result feels deliberate and satisfying. Without a plan, focal points sometimes disappear entirely, leaving viewers accidentally admiring a random shrub while ignoring the dragon you spent 6 hours coloring. One thing I find fascinating is how often people assume palettes must be complicated. In reality, some of the most beautiful projects use surprisingly few colors. Simplicity can be incredibly effective. Restricting your options often forces you to become more creative with the colors you do have. Instead of relying on endless variety, you start exploring value changes, layering, shading, and texture. It's similar to cooking. A chef doesn't necessarily need 50 ingredients to create a memorable meal. Sometimes a handful of carefully chosen ingredients produces better results than throwing the entire pantry into a pot and hoping for the best. Of course, there are times when planning can go too far. If you're spending 3 weeks researching palettes and never actually starting the project, we've wandered into dangerous territory. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is direction. A palette should guide you, not imprison you. Think of it as a helpful map rather than a legally binding contract. If you discover a better color midway through the project, you're allowed to adapt. The creativity police are not waiting outside your door. No one is going to confiscate your colored pencils because you substituted a different shade of green halfway through a mushroom illustration. Something else worth mentioning is that palettes improve confidence. Staring at a blank page can feel intimidating. Many creative blocks aren't actually about skill. They're about uncertainty. We hesitate because we're afraid of making the wrong choice. A planned palette removes some of that uncertainty. You've already solved one major part of the puzzle before you begin. That confidence creates momentum. Momentum creates progress. Progress creates enjoyment. Enjoyment makes you more likely to keep creating. It's a surprisingly powerful chain reaction. Sometimes the difference between finishing a project and abandoning it isn't talent. It's simply reducing enough friction that you actually want to continue. The funny thing is that experienced artists often appear spontaneous because they've internalized many of these decisions. After years of practice, palette planning can happen almost automatically. Beginners sometimes look at advanced work and assume the creator simply grabbed random colors and produced magic. Usually, there's more structure happening behind the scenes. The artist may not consciously be following a checklist, but they're still making decisions based on relationships, harmony, contrast, and mood. Understanding those principles doesn't make creativity less magical. If anything, it makes it easier to repeat the magic. Ultimately, building a color palette before you start isn't about restricting creativity. It's about giving creativity a stronger foundation. Planning affects outcome because every choice influences the choices that follow. A thoughtful palette creates consistency, reduces decision fatigue, strengthens mood, improves focus, and helps your finished work feel intentional. It doesn't require advanced knowledge or complicated theory. It simply requires a few moments of consideration before diving in. And honestly, if spending 5 minutes planning saves you from creating something that accidentally resembles a confused birthday party held inside a traffic cone factory, that's probably 5 minutes well spent. That's it for today's colorful time. I'd love to hear whether you plan your color palettes in advance or jump in and hope for the best. Take care, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.